Okay, I've got to try and get this out of my head, because if I don't, there's a chance it never comes out. I just had my first transcendental experience. And I really, truly mean that in every possible way you could interpret that. That's the way that I mean it. I just got out of a float at Truth Organic Spa in North Grafton. And for preparation, I get moderately high, I'll say. THC, vaporized specifically. And when I get in the float, I start by just obviously relaxing everything. And there's just something about the fact that there's no light, there's no sound, there's no taste. There's, once the waves of your entering the water dissipate, there's nothing to distract you from you but your thoughts. And so instead of having to compete, even right now, like I'm looking around, I'm sitting outside, right? There's all these things driving by, right? All these threats, all these things to be assessed. It's very easy to get pulled out of that seat of self because there's just so much to be distracted by, right? Just by the odds of it. And when there's nothing except you and your thoughts, then it's almost impossible, if you're trying, it's almost impossible not to see that you are not your thoughts. And so that's the very first part of the work. And then once I separate that, then I can figure out what's my mission for that day. And for this day, it was just letting go, surrender, pure unconditional surrender. And that meant revisiting a lot of very painful experiences. And that means either pain that I felt and trapped, or pain that I knew I inflicted on others and trapped. So, like, that was a very traumatizing experience, but for both of us, because obviously me, this conscious me, knew what was going on, but the unconscious part, which was trapped behind the walls of protection, saving me from the trauma of childhood, and then just the snowball of traumas that just get created from bouncing off all of those walls. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, so I started just going through and just opening all these doors into these chambers where I knew there was just a ton of energy trapped. And I went through a lot of painful stuff, a lot of really painful stuff, and didn't have a bodily reaction. It was just the energy pouring out. I could just feel it. And then Jammer going through his life, from picking him up at the airport, taking him home, disassembling his crate around him, all the times that Meg was at work and I had to go down and try and rescue him from the frickin' shrubs because he wouldn't come back in, and he'd run around the front, and all that stress, and having to just live a modified lifestyle to care for him. And just, he honestly was the first thing that really forced me to have moments of selflessness, because there was you couldn't bring an energy to him that wasn't pure love and get anything other than a painfully reactive response. And so he was the first, like, decryptor for me into how to live a more communal, symbiotic life where it's not just about you. and then the kids, and then finally recently, um, I've been able to focus a lot more on Meg. Anyway, so I'm pouring through all this stuff, and I can just feel it. I can just feel it leaving me, and it just feels incredible. And after, oh, and at one point, um, where I was going through periods of, things that I had done to other people, I was just chanting, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," as I just walked through the path of the memories, and just, it was like literally like releasing them from cages, and I could just feel it rushing through my body, just unmolested on its way out. And we'll see for the last time. Who knows how much is there. um but man, I just feel so light right now. And when I was done with that part of it, I fully relaxed for the first time in my entire life. Fully relaxed. And so, if you're not familiar with sensory deprivation floats, you're in about maybe, I don't know, 6 to 9 inches of water, but it's got about 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in it, so it's extremely buoyant. Or you're extremely buoyant. Excuse me. And the water's like 95 degrees ish, which is roughly the surface temperature of your skin. And it's completely dark, and it's a well insulated room, yada yada yada. And of course, I can't remember where I was going with that. Anyway, I'll just go back to the story, and we'll see if it was where I meant to connect it. It'll be fun to watch this back. So, letting go for the first time meant really, truly letting go of everything. Letting go of the fear of drowning. Letting go of the fear of the salt getting in my eyes. Letting go. There was a moment in this whole thing where I got interrupted by thinking, did I overstay my time? Is my session over and I just don't know it? And then I got back to my seat of self, and it was just like, you are having a transcendental experience, and you're worried about whether or not maybe you inconvenience someone for 15 minutes. Like, that's, on any measure, that's just a crazy thing to, like, once in a lifetime, and most lifetimes probably never have the experience, right? It's just so inequitable. Anyway. And there was a point where I felt it was almost like a hatch opened behind me. And I just felt myself fall, similar to how it was depicted in Get Out, I guess, when he falls into the blackness, like away from the reality. That's what happened to me. Like, I could feel myself falling away from, even though I couldn't see anything. Like, I could feel, that's what the sensation was, falling into something. And as I did that, there was an extremely strong, like, brightness in front of me. Not white light per se, but like a brightness. And as I fully surrendered, and I mean fully, I stopped breathing. And then the longer I was there without breath, I could feel the rest of my system slowing. And I just felt this incredible connection to the infinite. And it was at that moment that I suddenly felt all the energy around me. I can feel it right now, almost. Not quite. I'm not practiced enough to not be distracted by the traffic. But it's knocking on the door, and there's energy everywhere. And I stopped breathing for minutes at a time. I'm certain of this. And I can't hold my breath for even 1 minute. I tried it a few months ago. Maybe it was over the summer. when we were swimming in the pool, and I can't, or I couldn't, or the part of me that just participates in the game instead of sitting in the box is unable to do that. But when I surrendered, I didn't need anything. Now, that didn't last forever, and I certainly am not stupid enough to think that this flesh bag that I am somehow using to anchor to whatever the fuck this is doesn't need air. That's false. But I don't need air. And that was the moment that I had my transcendental experience, where I suddenly, fully, truly, fully recognized that I am not this. None of this is me. And I felt like I merged with the fucking metaverse, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. I felt like I had access to infinite energy. And I was suddenly in a seat of consciousness so strong that I could keep myself in that nirvana state and actively control my body. So I'd like pick my head up a little bit so that it was like a certain way, because it was more comfortable. And I was just suddenly so blown away by the prospect that you can have access to your whole mind. When people say you only use 10% of your brain, that's a broken system. It's a broken system because it means that you are divided between your conscious and your subconscious. And at that moment, I could control everything. I might not know the password to get to the system, right? Like I might not know where to even look to point it, but I know how to breathe. And I'm telling you right now, I could have stopped breathing until I blacked out. Now, certainly, there's no guarantee you're in a state of seat of self when your body stops working, right? Like, who the hell knows what happens with that? So I certainly wasn't looking to go there. But what was really cool is when my flesh capsule needed fuel effortlessly, without me needing to dictate it, my system took literally just what it needed. And it was so curious to be able to unpack it in real time, because I'm sitting there thinking, how much energy do you need just to exist in this world, to deal with all of your pain and suffering that you are still running from and protecting from getting stabbed by what people say or do, or the weather, or fucking whatever? And it really hit me that we have gone so astray. We've really come off the rails in terms of what we focus on, how we value anything. And it's actually incredibly inspiring, to be honest with you, because, as opposed to depressing, because what it means is that it is actually all within our control. Because I have to imagine on the other side of this, I mean, I'm like 3 weeks into this journey. On the other side of this, years from now, a decade, 2 decades from now, if I could walk around unmedicated every moment that I'm awake, in the state of absolute clarity, peace, and power, I can't even fathom what I could do. I cannot even fathom it. I can't even explain how, and when I say power, I don't mean power in the way that, like, I feel strong, or that I feel like I can, like, I'm bigger or better than something else, right? Like a me versus that. I just mean like I felt capable. Like I just had everything I ever needed. And it was just me. There was nothing else there but me. And now anytime I hear any kind of like self-help stuff, like I was just listening to a gentleman whose one of his speeches is one of my favorites of all time. And I got a notification that he had gone live, and I just so happened to have been on Facebook at that time, and I guess it gives me a push notification for that for some reason. Anyway, so I jumped on. He had like 2 minutes left, and he was doing like a Sunday sermon. And I was just listening to him talk, and it was just so cool because after reading this book, The Untethered Soul, at the end, it talks about how all great religions really refer to the same thing, which is this infinite energy source, which is God. And so, you could look at Jesus as, the earthly conduit to that, as a metaphor or as reality, who knows? But it's just really interesting because if you think about it in that way, metaphorically, that if you just replace Jesus, God, Muhammad, Allah, like whatever, just pick a thing, it's really it's all the same thing. It's all about surrender to that. Even Buddhism, all of it. If you really just get down to it, that's what it is. Anyway, I talked the owner into giving me an unlimited float plan. Because I'm going to be back here a lot. That was 17 minutes of ranting. And I guess we'll see what people have to think about it, because I'm going to share it with somebody.